Because Jorge has been on vacation, I thought I should do a little recap of where we've been on our journey in this series so far, just in case any of you have also either missed any of them or, been thinking about your grocery list or something else. We started with this series on polarizing times, spiritual tools for polarizing times, with humility. We talked about the wise men. We tried to lower our sort of expectation of how things will be. We talked about adventurous civility on Martin Luther King Day. We had a memorable sermon by Penny, her first ever, on patience. And last week, we thought a little bit about hope and a little bit about memory with the violins. And I think probably most of you were here for that, plus everyone else in the world. We ran out of chairs, we ran out of bulletins. It was an exciting time. And here, today, to me, is a hinge in this series. A hinge in the topic because we've come to the point, in a way, where the rubber meets the road. We've come to hospitality. Hospitality is the thing I have been waiting for all of this series because I think some of what we have talked about before, while necessary, could also lend itself to a sort of idea that tolerance is enough. The idea that the tools that we have might get us to a point where we could have a nice Thanksgiving dinner with people we disagree with, where we could be civil to our neighbors. We could maybe even do each other a favor every now and again. We could sort of get along without necessarily talking about anything. And to me, it's not enough. It's not enough that we might be walking towards some improvement in our discourse where we're just not quite fighting all the time. It's not enough that we might be able to tolerate each other, because the things that we disagree on are life and death. The things that we disagree with each other about in these polarizing times are not all things that we can just agree to disagree about and to still have a nice dinner together. People's lives are at stake. The world is at stake. The health of our ecosystem is at stake. People's futures are at stake. And so the idea that we might come to a point where we can sit across a table from each other, while very nice, is not enough. I'm not just in this to agree to disagree with people. I'm in this to change people's minds. So what do we do with that in these polarizing times? What do we do with this idea that we don't only have to have Thanksgiving with each other, we have to actually act. We have to actually make decisions. We have to actually go somewhere. We can't just live together and disagree about things where we have to actually act, because in fact, not acting is also making a choice. There is no neutral place for us to stand and have a nice meal. So in light of that, what would it take for people to change their minds? And I don't just mean other people. I should say that at the beginning. I also mean me. I have changed my mind about things in the past. I have found myself to be wrong about things. This might be a shocker. Perhaps some of you have also changed your minds. Perhaps you have learned things, gotten to a place where you look back and think, oh boy, I can't believe I ever felt that way about something. And thank God that we have the capacity to change, that we are not stuck in all of our ways of thinking forever. And thank God that other people are also in that same situation. Otherwise, what are we doing here? We all have this capacity to change. But what does it take? In my doctoral program, a couple of years ago, I ran a pilot study, a small study. I ran some interviews with people who have changed their mind about gay marriage. People particularly, it's actually not that small, but small enough subset, who felt opposed to gay marriage on religious grounds and who changed their minds. I interviewed about 15 people. Long-form interviews, very moving. Almost everyone cried. And the thing that I heard over and over from people was hospitality. People who had changed their minds on this topic said, "I can't believe how much grace my friends showed me when I was stuck in this old way of thinking, when I felt that Scripture was telling me that gay marriage was wrong. I felt that, my tradition gave me this structure. I felt this way. I understood things to be this way. And my friends kept showing up and kept talking to me about it and kept inviting me in and kept not making me feel ashamed, but kept making me feel welcome." Many people I talked to spent years wrestling with this before coming to a new way of thinking, and many of them are still friends with the people that walked through that with them. And what they said was, it never could have happened if people didn't keep welcoming me. My questions, my disagreements, if people didn't keep making space for me, I couldn't have changed. And many people expressed extreme gratitude for that. It's vulnerable, changing our minds. It's vulnerable. It puts us in this space where we don't know how we're going to be received. Shame shows up right away in a lot of times. We look back and we think, I can't bear to think that that was me. I can't bear for people to know. In a lot of cases, people put up their defenses because they just can't stand it to be that vulnerable. And here's a confession. You may already have figured out, in terms of a polarized society, in terms of polarized politics, where you might find me. And I can only speak for my people, who are on the left-leaning end of things in general. But we have a problem. We have a problem about hospitality. And we have a problem about people changing their minds. We have a problem, and we say, if you ever felt differently about something, you're a second-class citizen, if you can come in the door at all. If you have changed your mind, you are not welcome at the decision-making table. We cut people down about this all the time. If someone felt one way about something and changed their mind, what could they ever do to get all the way in the door? Who would want to join that group? Who would ever see a hopeful way forward? Who would not feel trapped in the way that they currently think, in the communities that they're currently in, if the door is always only halfway open? Your chair is always going to be away from the center. We have a problem with recognizing people who change and making space for people to come in. I'm in this for people to change their minds. And it's going to take hospitality to make space for people to do that. We have in our scripture passage 2 models of what it can look like to welcome someone back who has changed their mind. The brother who took his inheritance and squandered it through dissolute living in whatever way you imagine that looking like, who went off and wasted his money and found himself in dire straits, which is, in fact, in many cases, the moment when we might change our minds. We recognize ourselves in this vulnerable place. That brother had options. Even in poverty, he could have lined himself up with some despot. He could have followed some other path. He could have gotten involved in organized crime. I don't know. But he thought back to his father and his brother, and he thought, there's something about that way of life that's compelling to me. I wonder if there's a path back for me. I wonder if that door would be open. And you can hear his fear as he rehearses what he's going to say. I've sinned against heaven and against you. I know. I did everything wrong, but please, just let me in, please. You don't have to let me all the way in, please. Just treat me as one of your hired hands. I know. Anything you could say to me, I've already said to myself. And you know what comes after this welcome. We read the father's welcome. You know what his brother does after that. His brother says, Dad, what are you doing? We can't trust him. He ran off and spent all of his stuff. You can't let him, don't give him a robe. What are you doing with that calf? Why are you opening your arms to him? You know what kind of person he is. He showed his character. Two ways. And I'm willing to bet that in this case, the father is not leaving his purse on the table right away either. It doesn't mean that you have to totally jump in with both feet. But there's something better than saying, I know your character and I don't believe you can change. There's something better than that. There's something about making space for someone to come in if we are going to be able to make decisions together. If we are going to be able to take action on things that matter, we are going to need a path in for people who change their minds. And we are going to need to recognize in ourselves the capacity to change and to learn and to grow also. I guarantee that there are things that we are all patting ourselves on the back for right now, that in 20 or 30 years, people are going to look back and say, can you believe it? That is so embarrassing. Surely we were never like that. I guarantee it, because we grow and we learn. It's one of our best assets. But we have to make space for it to happen. We truly do. Otherwise, all these tools that we have been learning are tools for self-care instead of for transformation. These are not spiritual tools just to make us feel better. They are spiritual tools for moving forward. And we need hospitality to get us there. We have in our midst a witness to this kind of hospitality. The table of Christ that Jesus shared with people he knew were going to fall short. We all will. We all will. But the table is open to all. And I hope that our hearts will be too.